I'd like to invite on stage the founder, CEO of TRA Research and the founder of the Cognizant Group, comprising of companies focusing on brand analytics, media analytics, and communications. Ladies and gentlemen, here to commence this evening's proceedings, please help me welcome Mr. N. Chandramouli.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for being here today for the second annual event that we host for business leaders called Trust Conference. We, as an organization, started off by naming ourselves Trust Research Advisory and later changed our name to TRA Research because we didn't limit ourselves only to trust in whatever we studied. We expanded our scope and found that we wanted to really look at the essence of whatever brands exist for. And that is to propagate, to move like genetic propagation, like humans and other living beings and things do. You exist to do one thing, that is to actually propagate your gene in one way. I mean, if you look at it in the core of whatever living beings exist for. In terms of ideas which have soul or brands, we believe that they exist to propagate similarly from mind to mind. And as long as they are moving and they're kind of breeding in and therefore becoming sources for jumping off that other mind into many more, we think brands have a story to tell and an existence. And therefore, since that is the case, we believe, and it's in the mind, it's mimetic in one way, and therefore we believe very strongly that what counts most for a brand is the intangible aspects of the brand. And what does that imply? I mean, we are so focused on and so consumed by the tangible aspects. I mean, most, I think, boardroom discussions are in terms of what the Q results were, or how many people are we employing, or how many left us, or the fracas of this morning, Mr. Sikka having put in his papers. Things that are not necessarily tangibilized, not to do with money, not to do with size, not to do with anything else that is measurable directly, are far more important than those that are not. So we believe things like aspects such as trust and attractiveness. Trust being the most important transactional element. All transactions happen on the basis of trust. And the second, a slightly lighter word called attractiveness, but not less important. Attractiveness takes into account all the subliminal, desire-based, socio-psycho-cultural forces that come into play, which often we ourselves cannot explain. To us, this concept of trust and attractiveness together actually make up everything that happens in the world. Every sentient being, whatever they do, does that or acts because of it, and it is essentially a driver for every, especially human action or any sentient action. With that as the background, we began researching this with several important experts in 4 areas, which is anthropology, sociology, psychology, and in communications. And after having spoken to several hundreds of those, came to these matrices that we currently own across the globe, which we also apply very strongly. We only do this, as Xenia, our MC, just said, we only do buying propensity. We only measure it, and with one purpose. We feel that the potential of ideas, and in this case, by extension, brands, can actually be an enhancer of what happens in the world, or can diminish it manifold by virtue of the entire communication of it going right or wrong. A good idea, if communicated well, can propagate. A good idea, if it's not, will not propagate no matter how good the idea is. And therefore, the communication aspect of it is extremely important. And before I say communication, I must tell you that action is the first fundamental of communication. So it subsumes communication in a large way. And I think that's where we began to build data completely without any precedents in terms of it having been done before. So there is nothing that exists in terms of saying that, okay, we'll measure trust or we'll measure attractiveness. And it's almost sounded weird to people when we said we're going to measure the latter at least. I mean, how do you measure attractiveness? But our matrices showed that we could, and we had an able partner in ISI who was able to bring in a very strong methodology which helped us kind of bring this together. And today, several dozens of brands, scores of brands use our data in order to be able to, one, look at from each individual point of view, trust better as well as attractiveness better, meaning are they going to become more desirable? And trust you me, even the most, let's say, corporate of brands needs to be desirable. It can't just have trust in it. And when you have both of these together, then the buying cycle gets completed. And this buying cycle is not about me having to pay something in order to, it's buying into as an idea. And that's what has been a successful journey of the last 8 years so far. And this conference is titled Building Brands to Last, and that's the theme that we want to have throughout. And one thing that led us to add this theme to this conference, or to make it the base of this conference, is basically because we believe that if brands don't have at least a 10-decade view, a 100-year view of the way that they have to act and think, then there will be always something that will go wrong. Of course, there will be ups and downs, there will be several things that will impact a brand in good and bad ways. But the essential thought behind a brand has to be in the long term. And therefore, this aspect of think 100 years, you act, you do larger activities, you do maybe campaigns, but it's all led by people who may not be there in the long term. The brand essentially doesn't lead it. And the continuing force beyond the people who will come and go in that position who handle brands will be the brand itself. And therefore, there has to be, in one way, this custodian of a brand that exists in every board, if need be, who takes care of these two things, how it impacts, every action of it impacts the trust, and every action of it impacts the desirability of the brand in the long term. And that's why we exist, and that's why we want to have these conferences every year. We're going to have it every year on the same theme, but the speakers and the formats will differ and kind of keep moving on. This is moved on from trust, actually, and it's become a business leaders conference where we want to discuss various issues that are relevant today. And therefore, we have very engaging sessions. We are very short but very engaging sessions, each of these, and hopefully you'll have a great day. That's my call for saying. It's also a call for every other moderator and speaker panels. So when you hear that, you know what to do. So I will sign off now and wish you all the best and hope you enjoy this session. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.